studios. I'm on some PTO time from the day job and wanted to talk about performative training. In other words, companies that say, oh, yes, we offer training. But when you really poke around, when you really start digging, you realize it's all for show. It's window dressing, it's a thin veneer. It's really just the illusion of training. How do you recognize it? Maybe you're interviewing at a company and you want to understand, do they have good training? Maybe you're a consultant to a company and you want to get a good sense of, do they have an actual learning culture, or are they just kind of ticking the box? Maybe you're an L&D professional and you're thinking, maybe I want to partner up with this company a little bit. How do you really understand? What are the signs? What are 5 signs that the company really isn't all that serious about training? It looks great from the outside, but when you dig in a little bit, you realize it's performative. They are just going through the motions. So, what are the signs? Let me grab my notes here as I throw them all over the place. Thank you for joining me here on NBT Live. Hopefully everybody is having a great Tuesday morning here in the USA. So, what are the signs? I'm going to unpack all those. What is performative training? And NBT, don't forget to visit noboringtraining.com. Check it out for more resources for trainers themselves if you do the training, or for leaders who want to get an impact from the training in their organization. You want to move your strategy forward. You want to move your business forward. You want to crush those top line metrics. Training is an area that, one of many areas that can help you to do that. And in noboringtraining.com has lots of free tools and resources. It's also where you can find your copy of The Hard Truths of Becoming a No Boring Trainer. So enough commercial. Let's dive in. What are 5 signs that the organization, the company, is not that serious about training? All right, number 1, they offer training, but it's compliance level stuff. It's low level stuff. It's, here's how you go to ADP or your HR software platform and request time off, request PTO, request a holiday. It's, how do you badge in? It's, what are our policies? It's, how do you fill out this paperwork? It's that level stuff, real Mickey Mouse level type stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, that is important knowledge to know and understand as a member of the firm. But that's pretty low level stuff, and it's kind of what I call one and done. When you figure out how to submit your expenses once, you don't really need to go back for ongoing development training over and over and over again. It's that compliance level stuff. Maybe it's safety stuff. Typically, it's canned, off the shelf. Here, sit here on day 1 and watch these videos. And it's about, it's off the shelf, canned, fall protection, how to use industrial equipment, how to use the chop saw, how to use the fork truck, whatever. All very valuable stuff. Don't get me wrong. I'm not, very, very important stuff. But it's that canned, off the shelf training material. You watch the video, you go to it, maybe it's an e-learning based safety program, and you just sort of click through the slides as quick as you can. You get to the end, you take a quiz. The quiz is so basic and simple and easy that anybody off the street could get the answer. It's not really life changing. Compliance level includes all the HR type topics as well. So it's, don't smack your coworkers when you have a disagreement, don't touch people, all the compliance level harassment type stuff. Again, super critical, super important. No shade being thrown at any safety, HR compliance, how do you request time off, all very important stuff. But that's really where the training then ends. And there's really you want to start asking, well, what happens after onboarding when I do all these sort of basic level trainings? And then the runway ends. And there's not much that happens after that. Well, that's a really big sign that your organization is really not that serious about training. It's kind of a veneer, it's window dressing. all of the training is kind of accomplished and done after onboarding, really. It's really off the shelf. It's really canned material that the company went out and bought. It's not really customized to the needs of the company. So there's red flag number one to look for. Maybe you're interviewing with a company and you're wondering, well, how good is this training really going to be? If the training ends after onboarding and it stays in that compliance level pool of subjects that I just mentioned, you should be very nervous. There's not likely to be much training afterwards. So that's for red flag number one to look for: a compliance heavy topic curriculum, and then it just sort of dies out after that. Red flag number two to look for: what are the signs, 5 signs that your company is really not all that serious about training? Anything that's really job role specific. Maybe the organization says, oh, yes, we absolutely have a training program. We got training. We go to the classroom. It's all online delivered. It's all instructor led in a classroom. Maybe it's all e-learning based or a mixture of those. And it's for a job role. Looks really great, right? On paper, the CEO can say, absolutely, we have training. The recruiters can say, we've got training. Oh, yeah, absolutely. When recruiters are talking to potential candidates to hire, the recruiter can say, absolutely, positively, we offer training. All right. Well, what does red flag number two look like? They're just not really that serious. This is kind of window dressing. It's a veneer, it's an illusion. Well, when you start looking at the job role specific training, there is a notebook or a handbook or a guide of some sort, but that guide, that handbook, that notebook, that 3-ring binder of training has not been updated in forever. It's just a bunch of curriculum that got put together at one point and has not been updated since. Or it's very static. Somebody does get trained on that notebook of stuff, that handbook of stuff. Yeah, they go through it. But that's it. That's it. That's the sum total. There's no practicing of the skills. There's no discussion about the skills. There's no like growing the skills over time. It's just, here's this dusty notebook, work your way through the material, or here's the e-learnings, work your way through the material, and there's no application to real life. The same thing with the classroom-based stuff. It's classroom-based and it's delivered and it might even really be entertaining, but there's no real connection to real world training, real world situations, real world environments. So red flag number two, look for the job role specific stuff. Is there a notebook that's never been updated ever since its original creation, or does the curriculum not really deviate from that? You want to look for shadowing. Is there a real heavy instance of shadowing in place? But it's unstructured shadowing. It's just go over there with Bob. Bob will show you what to do. And there goes my notes again. And Bob's going to show you what to do. Oh, great. But Bob's busy. Bob's not been taught how to teach other people. Bob's not been given a specific list of things to teach. And Bob doesn't even know how to really evaluate that you learned it. And pretty soon, Bob just kind of shows you some stuff, and now you got to do it. So, yeah, they're shadowing, but it's an unstructured mess. And frankly, the company is really just dumping the training responsibility on Bob to show everybody, or Nancy, or whoever. Unstructured shadowing. That's a great red flag under this idea of job role specific training is very thin. There's a window dressing, and really the company is not that serious about training. There's no ongoing development. So even if they do some random things for training in the beginning to help you understand the nature of the job role, after you go through whatever that training is, there's no ongoing development. Many roles have a ramp period where you have to get better at the job. The companies that are really serious about training have a structured ongoing development program. So at month 2 and 5 and 7 and 13, or whatever the cadence and frequency is, there are specific trainings you need to take, which are elevating your skills over time. And those trainings are structured over time. So you're building up experience doing the job for real. And then you take this class to go to the next level. And then you go back to real life. And then you take another class, whatever. And that ongoing development could be a mixture of in-person instructor led, virtual instructor led. It could be e-learning modules, whatever. But it exists. Companies that don't really have a serious investment into training other than just the thin window dressing veneer, it does not exist. So look for that ongoing development piece. If you're interviewing with a company and you want to know, do they have a serious commitment to training? What does ongoing development look like? And their answer should be, there is a very clear roadmap, a very clear sequence of materials that you need to complete, a very clear sequence of additional training. If it sounds like a hodgepodge, it likely is. And then lastly, under this red flag of job skills training, there's no layers. Look for layers of learning. Companies that are serious about the development of their people will offer learning in multiple layers. Of course, at MBT Nation, if you're a certified no boring trainer, you understand that a learning culture should have layers. So maybe that's in-person training, virtual instructor led, e-learning. There's explainer videos. There's maybe a SharePoint or something like a SharePoint with guides and PDFs and work instructions and work tools and work aids. There's structured shadowing that's occurring. Maybe there's a coaching program or a mentorship program, or you're having some sort of internal system where new hires are connected with more established people, even if it's in an informal sort of way. Maybe there's an internal podcast of some sort, whatever. There's 1,000 different ways to layer learning across the organization. When you're looking at that red flag number 2, that a company really isn't that serious about training, if there's no layers, there's that they're paying lip service to training. So job role specific training, red flag number 2, that a company really just isn't that serious about training. You want to look for, is there a notebook that's never been updated ever in the history of whatever, or it's a notebook or a workbook that you work through. Yeah, there's training, you work through the workbook, but that workbook is totally disconnected from the life. There's no practice, there's no case studies, there's no role plays, there's no simulations, and it's totally devoid from what's actually happening out in the field. There's no ongoing development program. There's a really heavy use of unstructured shadowing. And then there's no layers. The last piece under this, one more thing to look for. The training is scattered at the team level. So even if you do go to job skills training, maybe at the corporate level for a couple weeks or a couple days, then everything else gets pushed out to the team. And it's really fractured and disconnected, and again, very unstructured. So some red flags to look for there. So number 1, look for compliance heavy training, and that's it. Everything ends after onboarding and that compliance level stuff. Number 2, even if there is job-specific training, it's got some of these red flags that I just mentioned. Number 3, there is a complete and utter disconnect to company strategy. If you want a red flag of what to look for a company that isn't that serious about training, there will be a very big divorce between the training and the strategy of the organization. If there's a gulf there, there's a divide. And everything at the training level is just, here's how you do this job in isolation, or here's this topic in isolation. Here's this thing you need to know, but it's this just thing that exists in totally devoid and disconnected from the overarching strategy of the organization. And that's a company that's not real serious about their training. Yeah, they have the thing. Yeah, they have this training. Maybe it's an article that lives in a shared notebook somewhere. Maybe it's a shared article that's available on a SharePoint site. That's great. And you can search it up and find it and learn how to do this task. Here's how you complete this transaction, maybe at a financial institution. Great. How does doing that transaction move the strategy of the organization forwards? That's really where companies start to lose the plot a lot of times. It's frankly where trainers will start to lose the plot. The people in the training department will crank out. I'm using this example of an article that you can search to complete a transaction. Great. That's awesome that it exists. But that's the veneer, that's the surface level. And yeah, it's great that people can go and search that article and learn how to do the thing they need to do. No shade at that at all. But if that isn't moving the strategy of the organization forwards to serve the customer, if it's not helping connect to big picture business goals, you're leaving something on the table. You're really not doing training as deeply as you could, or you're not supporting the business as deeply as you should. Underneath this bullet point number 3, disconnection from strategy, if you can't look at an individual piece of training content and get a sense of the mission, vision, values of the organization, at least a hint, an idea, you're probably just sort of you're ticking the box. Yeah, we did some training. Here's this training content piece. But I don't really get a sense of the vibe. I don't get a sense of the organization's why. I don't get a sense of what makes this company tick. That could be a red flag. So if you're a trainer doing a training audit of your organization, go pull some random piece of training content. Maybe it's an explainer video. Maybe it's an internal blog post. Maybe it's an infographic. Can you get a hint, a whiff, a sense of the company's mission, vision, values, and strategy? Now, that could be challenging. Again, I use the example of a financial institution. You've got a shared article of how to do a transaction or procedure. And there's only so many ways you can dress that up, right? So it gets challenging. I get that. But over time, if you dig through a company's learning content, if you don't get a sense of the mission, vision, values of the strategy of the organization, that's a red flag that the company really isn't that serious about training. All right, underneath this umbrella of no connection to strategy, again, if you do an audit of a company's learning materials, if you don't get a sense of what pushes the business forwards, what is the competitive advantage of the business, what is really helping the customer and helping the company to achieve its goals, again, much like mission, vision, values, much like strategy, if you're not getting a sense of that organically throughout the learning content, that is a red flag that the company really just isn't that serious about training. Yeah, there's a veneer, there's that window dressing, there's training content, it exists. It's not like they're not doing nothing, but they're not maximizing it like they could be. All right, MBT Nation. What do you think so far? Let me know. Leave me a comment in the chat. In fact, let's check the chat there. So, all right, checking a couple things there. And of course, here at MBT Nation, we are here to help trainers themselves and the leaders of organizations get a strategic impact from their training efforts. Leaders, you're investing a lot of time, energy, and money, your company's time, energy, and money. Are you getting an impact on the organization? NBT can help you do that. You help you get results, not yawns, from your training. All right, so red flag number 4, that your company really just isn't that serious about training. Red flag number 4. Yeah, your company offers training. Yeah, there's a training group. Yeah, you go through some training, but it's really shallow. It's a veneer, it's a thin crust of training, a thin layer of training. And when you really start poking around, you realize there's some serious gaps, and that training isn't really organically baked into the organization's fabric. It's not really a taproot that moves that business forwards. Number 4, red flag to look for, the field and senior leaders are disconnected from the training itself. The field and senior leaders are disconnected from the training itself. And that can show up in a lot of different ways. So that is either they are too busy for their people to go to training. If you have an organization where even if training exists and there's a training department and training programs happening and e-learning's happening and training SharePoints and all these things exist, but the field manager is constantly saying, my team's too busy. My team can't possibly come to training right now. That's a red flag that they're really not that serious about training. If the field managers are saying, oh, I'm too busy to even come down and participate in the training or observe the training or talk to the trainers about feedback, that's a red flag that they're really not that serious about training. Too busy. We're just too busy. That could be the leaders are, or the field managers, when the trainers go approach the field managers to say, hey, how do we make this thing better? Too busy. Can't talk right now. Too busy is a red flag that those leaders are disconnected. I tell you what, field and senior leaders being disconnected from training, they will start to undermine the training. That's a great red flag to look for. And it may not be overt. They may not come right out and say, don't worry about that training. But they won't do anything to reinforce the training. They won't stay current about what training is happening for their people. They won't understand what training is being offered, let alone the content. And so while they may not come right out and say, don't listen to those trainers, don't listen, ignore the training you took in that e-learning, they won't come right out and say that. But their lack of interest, their lack of support, their lack of knowledge about what's actually happening in the training room will start to undercut that. And that is a clear red flag that your company really isn't that serious about training. Now, I've also seen in some organizations where people will outwardly, overtly undermine the training. And you want to talk about absolutely detonating and demolishing the investment in training that the senior leaders might be making when you have your field level managers undermining, overtly saying, yeah, don't listen to that. That's not what we do. We do it this other way here. Man, you want to talk about undercutting that training investment. Ouch. And then, like I said, ultimately, they're just not that interested in what's happening down in the training side of things. They aren't aware of what tools are available. So when that field manager or senior level manager has somebody on their team who's maybe struggling a little bit, they need a little help, they need a little TLC, those leaders aren't aware of what tools exist to help that person grow. So one-on-ones, or there's never any mention of what training materials have you tried to use or are available, or, hey, did you take that course on whatever? Coaching. They're trying to coach somebody through a challenging time, and they don't say, hey, you know what? Have you taken that e-learning module about whatever? They, when somebody's, when they're working side by side with somebody, there isn't a, hey, go complete this training and then come back and then we're going to do this thing together. Or they're not saying, if they're not demonstrating, here's like an elevated way of doing what you just learned in training. Let me show you, in the real world, not in an undermining sort of way, but let me show you how this is done. You learned it in the training environment. Now let's show you how we're doing the same procedure at a faster pace or in real life, or maybe it's a medical situation. We're doing this while somebody else is in the room talking, and there's a family member in the room, and there's five other people hitting the call button. So it's reinforcing the training. And lastly, the senior leader disconnect, with the way that shows up is, they're just, there's no access to them to talk about training. There's no involvement to say, what is the training, coming down the pike that we need to do. Um, they're just sort of divorced from the whole thing. So that's red flag number 4 to look for. The company just isn't that serious about training. They play a good game. They talk it up. Like I said, throughout today's NBT Live, the recruiters, when they're recruiting people to the company, oh yes, we absolutely have a training program. Oh, we have a training. We offer great training. The leader, the CEO, oh, absolutely. We absolutely have great training here at Blauman Incorporated. They say it, they talk about it, they even have it, but it's really window dressing. It's tick the box, it's very basic, it's very shallow, and it's really not integrated into their culture. There's really not a deep taproot of training that's tied to the overarching business strategy that's helping people grow and develop and get better. And that's what people want. The research is clear. Teams are crying out for training and development opportunities. When we see that across survey after survey after survey, that people are willing to leave a job when there isn't proper training available. We're seeing that across different generations. More and more of your Gen Zs and now your Gen Alphas are saying, we want training and development opportunities. We want to grow. We want to progress in our careers. People want the training. So, what are the red flags to look for? Well, let me back up. People want the training. So, companies are saying, yes, of course we have training as a recruiting method. And then you get in there and you realize the training's pretty shallow. It's pretty weak. It's pretty basic. So, these are some of the signs to look for. And this is really, like I said, if you're maybe applying at a company and you want to get a sense of, is this window dressing training or is this real training? These are some of the things you can ask about, dig into, probe into. Maybe you're a learning and development pro inside a company and you want to do a little bit of a self audit. These are some of the opportunities inside your firm. If you're the trainer, to say, geez, we don't really have ongoing development in this key team. Maybe let me go look at that. Or, geez, I really need to build a stronger connection between our field level managers and the training. So this is really aimed at you trainers as well. And then senior leaders, of course, this is aimed at you as well. These are some of the red flags to look for. If you're, puffing out your chest saying, yeah, we got training, but maybe some of these points are hitting a little too close to home. Maybe this is, maybe we should have a little chat. Maybe this is an opportunity to level up. It's an opportunity to push your strategy forward. It's an opportunity to build the conditions you need to have now to get you to where you want to be 5 years from now. Maybe as you build the conditions you want to get where you need to go 5 years, 10 years down the road, when the future is ambiguous and the data set isn't quite clear, you're just trying to build the right conditions. Let's have a little chat, because I can help you build that, at least as it pertains to training. So if some of these points are hitting a little too close to home, leaders, let's chat a little bit. These are the 5 signs your company really isn't that serious about training. So number 5, here's a red flag to look for. We've hit on some big ones. Compliance level training. Yeah, there's training, but it's low level stuff. It's basic level stuff. How to request your vacation time, how to fill out a form, watch this canned safety or HR video. Job role specific training is offered, but that's it. And it's pretty weak sauce stuff to begin with. There's a notebook that hasn't been updated in 20 years. There's disconnected shadowing. There's really no ongoing development. The training that's offered is scattered across teams. There's no connection to strategy. So yeah, you're completing training, but it's really disjointed stuff. It's very task specific stuff. And there's no real taproot towards what's important to the company, the strategy, the mission, vision, values. So you end up with a bunch of disjointed, scattered trainings that kind of stand alone and don't make a lot of sense as the end user. And then you have the field and senior level disconnect. That's a red flag that that company really isn't that serious about training. All right. And then on number 5, the 5th red flag to look for, that your company really isn't that serious about training. The training is not included as a major function in the organization. Here's what I mean by that. If you want to know that your firm is not that serious about training, when they're not part of the strategy, like I mentioned before, when they're an afterthought, when they're not included in the vision planning for 5 years, 10 years down the road, when there's no access to the senior leaders, when there's no dialogue, they're just thought of as a low level function inside the organization. Likely they're buried as a team within a team within a team within a team, or they're scattered across multiple teams. There's a team level trainer, but there's no connection to like a senior level trainer or a C suite, a chief learning officer who's responsible for all that training at the team level. The training is just sort of spread across the organization with no real continuity, no real connection, no real clarity. There's no, like I mentioned, there's no connection to senior leadership, no access. So that when the senior leader says, hey, here's where really what I'm struggling with, it's there's no thought of, well maybe we should include a trainer in part of the brainstorming of how we fix this thing. And that kind of leads me to the other sub point of this idea that they're not, red flag number 5 is they're really not thought of as a higher level function in the organization, is the trainer's other skills are often underutilized. If you're a certified no boring trainer like me, you can do a lot of stuff besides just deliver training. You are pretty good at project management. You're pretty good at connecting the dots across the organization. You have really good networks across the organization. You can build content. So you can build SharePoint sites, you can edit videos, you can make videos, you can make graphics. You've got, pretty good stuff there. You're really good with data analytics, so you can crunch a bunch of numbers. Not to say that you're a pro level business analyst, but if you can build a pretty decent pretty decent SharePoint site. You can build a pretty good spreadsheet. You can pull information out of that spreadsheet. You can look at that spreadsheet and look at trends and make assumptions or make good inferences based on that information. You have the ability to facilitate meetings and workshops. So maybe you could run a creativity workshop or you can run a business alignment workshop. Trainers have lots of different varying skills. And a really good sign that a company isn't that serious about training is that the trainer's skills are not utilized. They're just sort of pigeonholed. Oh, they're just a trainer. They just train. They just get in front of the group and train, or they're an instructional designer and they just build e-learnings. That's all they really do. If you want a sign that your company really isn't that serious about trainers or about training, if you want a sign that your company isn't really that serious about training, take a look at what other skills from the trainers are utilized across the organization. Are they just kept into the bucket of training? Or are they allowed to flex their muscles in some of these other areas? Data analytics, project management, business analyst, business information, marketing on some level, communications on some level. These are all things that trainers are naturally very good at. And in thinner organizations and companies that don't have 40,000 employees and huge departments aimed at all these different things I just mentioned, your trainers can probably help you out. And I can almost guarantee you, when you go into a business and you start really asking about trainers and training, the second I see a trainer who's able to utilize all these skills across the organization, almost one for one, they come from organizations where training is taken very seriously. Because guess what? If you take training seriously and you don't have a lot of bodies, you don't have a full fledged training department, you get really good at all these other skills. So that's why it's a red flag. And when a business is serious about training, training is elevated as a function inside the organization. It's elevated across the organization. They have access to what they need. They have the resources that they need. They have availability. Doesn't mean that they have 1,000 people on the team. You may have to make do with how many ever bodies you have, but at least you're not just a one person show when you really need five just to keep your head above water. So the fifth red flag that your company isn't as serious about training as they pretend to be, they've got window dressing, a veneer of training, is that it's not treated as a higher level function inside the organization. It's really kept as a team within a team within a team, 1,000 layers down the org chart. The trainer role is it's kind of a low level role. There's no management structure or leadership structure inside the training piece. It's not really a pathway towards promotion. It's really not a pathway to help the organization in other ways. It's just sort of pigeonholed over here. It's kind of an afterthought. Oh, yeah, we got to do some training too. That's a good red flag that the company isn't that serious about training. So there you have it, NBT Nation. 5 signs that your company has training. They have trainers. They offer training, but they're just not that serious about it. It's just at a very thin level. It's sort of window dressing. It's what I call performative training. Is it compliance based? Is it job role specific? And that's it. And it's pretty weak job role specific stuff. There's no ongoing development. There's no, it's scattered across teams. It's very shadowing based, unstructured shadowing based. Is there disconnect and no connection whatsoever to business strategy, no matter what piece of content you look at, what learning program you look at, no matter course you look at, e-learning module, you can't make heads or tails out of the mission, vision, values of that organization or what's important to that organization. There's no real connection to field or senior level leadership. They're just too busy, too much going on. They're just not that interested. And the business or the training is viewed as a lower level function inside the organization. If you're interviewing with a company, I would start asking questions about these particular topics. I'd start really digging in and paying attention. If training is important to you, ongoing development is important to you in this job that you're interviewing at, ask some questions around these particular topics. If you're a trainer and you want to have a little bit of an audit of the depth and quality of your training in your organization, look at these specific areas. Or if you're a leader and you're curious, am I getting a return on this investment? Am I using learning as a strategic tool, building a taproot of development for my organization and really connecting the strategy of where I want to be 10 years from now and the conditions I need to create to get there and the taproot to help grow and build? Am I really using this as a strategic tool? Or is this just a check the box exercise? And these are some of the areas to look into. If some of these topics hit a little too close to home, well, there you have it. Maybe it's time we have a little bit of a chat. There you go, NBT Nation, a little bit of a Tuesday late morning, early afternoon pop-up live here on NBT Nation. 5 signs that your company isn't really as serious about training as they let on. What do you know? What do you think? Which one of these hit close to home for you? Which one of these what other areas should we be looking at? What did I miss? What would you include on the list? Let me know. Leave me a comment down below. There you have it, NBT Nation. Hopefully you're all having a great day, a great rest of the day. don't forget to visit noboringtraining.com for a bunch of free resources, more videos, more guides, more downloadable tools, more resources.